What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. And in today's video we're going to be going through the most underrated fighters in each weight class, or the most underrated fighter in each weight class I should say. We're picking one fighter in each weight class that in my opinion is the dark horse of the division, or is at least a dark horse, because there are more than one. You guys, you have your own choices. I've seen other people do this video, of course. They've made their own choices, but I've come up with some different ones. Some of them are the same, but I think a lot of them are different, and my reasoning for them I think is pretty solid. So firstly, here's the definition of dark horse, so you can just read that. So you're going to question some of my picks and be like, what about this guy? What about this guy? And in my opinion, the reason I haven't put them is because I don't believe they fit the definition of dark horse, because dark horses are like people that they're not being talked about. They're not expected to do well. They're not expected to win. And so guys like Diego Lopez, I'll give you a spoiler, is not the dark horse for featherweight, because everyone's talking about him as a guy who could be a top 5 guy right now. That means you're not a dark horse because people think you could already do it. So that's my opinion, but whatever, let's get into the video. So for flyweight, I've gone with Joshua Van. Now, a few of you might disagree with this one, and I was considering some other options. I was still considering a Steve Erceg pick, but he did just fight for the belt, and even though it was a close fight, he arguably won. I think, in my opinion, that means he's no longer a dark horse. People now know how good Steve Erceg is, and they now expect big things from him. Another guy I was thinking of was maybe even Alex Perez, because even though he has come off a bunch of losses, he's coming off a KO win, and I'm like, people are kind of sleeping on Perez. He's only really lost to like high-level grapplers, and then like Figgy, I guess. And then I was thinking, maybe Makayev, not really though, maybe Tatsuro Taira, but then I watch everyone's videos and they all put Tatsuro Taira as their dark horse. So if everyone's saying this guy's the dark horse of the division, is he really the dark horse of the division? That's my question. So I've gone with Joshua Van because I think people talk about Makayev and Taira as the future of flyweight, these 23, 24-year-old guys that are going to be around for ages and they're really promising. Which they are, but I think Joshua Van is that guy who's been left out of the equation for now. He's booked to fight Tagirul and Bekov in a couple of weeks. I think he might win that. I'm worried for him because I'm not sure how good his grappling is at this stage. That is something I'm concerned about. But striking-wise, I've already talked about this guy on a prospect video before. Striking-wise, he's one of the best in the division already. I think I did my boxers video a couple of days ago. And I put him as... I didn't. I put Erceg as the best boxer, but I said, just watching them box, watching them strike, I actually think Van, just the eye test tells me Van's better, but obviously the level of competition is a bit lower. So we'll see how he goes against the top 15 guy with grappling. And if he wins that, if he passes that test with Tagir, then I'll be proven right. And if not, I think unless he gets outstruck by Tagir, then I'm still not off this train, because I do think his striking is some of the best in the division, and I still do think he can do really well in 5-round fights. And I know some people are talking about him. I'm not saying Josh Van is this unknown guy that only I've brought to the public's attention, of course. Like, people know who he is, but I think a lot of the casuals don't. Some minor, like casual to medium kind of fan level, they know the Makayevs of the world. They think they're being smart and all edgy, going like, Makayev's the dark horse, he's a prospect. But no, I think the real hardcore fans know Van, but I don't think anyone else does. So yeah, Josh Van, dark horse of the flyweight division in my opinion. Let's move on though to the bantamweight division. Now for bantamweight, I'm going with Damon Blackshear. Now a lot of you guys might not know who this is. Like, if you're not a full hardcore fan, like if you don't completely follow the sport every week and know every fucking fighter on the roster, like me, because you've got nothing better to do with your lives, like me, then you probably don't know who Damon Blackshear is. But he did fight Mario Bautista on UFC 292 on the O'Malley card on short notice. And so if you don't know, he fought the week before. He got a twister submission, like the 3rd or 4th one in UFC history, against the can, mind you, not a good opponent, but still, it's a twister. And then he turns around literally 6-7 days later. He gets the call like a day after his fight, and he fights the very next weekend. And in my opinion, beat Mario Bautista, who's a ranked guy who just kind of smoked Ricky Simone. Well, not smoked, but clearly won the last 2 rounds, and arguably won every round of that fight. And we're talking about Damon Blackshear, who arguably won that fight. In my opinion, he clearly won the first 2 rounds, lost the 3rd, but that's fine, bro. He gassed out a little bit, but yeah, you're going to gas. He cut weight. It wasn't even a catch weight. He cut to 35 twice in a week. Like, he was doing some Hamzat shit at bantamweight too, at lower weight classes. That's like even more crazy in my opinion. And in my opinion, he beat him I thought he beat Mario Batista. Go back and rewatch that fight. I really do think he won that fight. And I picked him as well. I picked him to win, and I was pissed off because he was an underdog, and I was like, I'm going to get this underdog pick that no one else is predicting. But obviously, he, in my opinion, got robbed. But whatever. He's got some losses, obviously. He has lost 6 times. Now, you guys might look at that and be like, bomb, can, overrated, shit. Like, that to the eye, that's what you might say. But never been finished, and his losses, again, close one to Bautista. He lost to Farid Basharat and gave Farid quite a bit of trouble, but Farid's a heavy grappler, so yeah, the people that just heavy wrestle him, those aren't his best style matchups, but like his other fights, he gave some trouble to Yusuf Zalal as well, and we know Zalal's good, and that's up at featherweight. He's not a featherweight, he's a bantamweight. But yeah, I think Damon Blackshear is really good. I've seen him on his Instagram story. He's been training Tiger Muay Thai in Thailand. His striking is looking really good. He said he's got fight news coming soon, so hopefully we see this guy in the cage in the next couple months, and then if he fights and he wins, then you'll know. If you don't know, you will now. If we see Damon Blackshear get another fight in, which I hope we do, because he's really good to watch. He's got great grappling. He's got very solid striking, but he's got really good jiu-jitsu, great grappling, and a well-rounded guy. So yeah, I hope to see him back in the cage soon. I hope he gets a win, so you guys who might not know who he is can be across the Damon Blackshear sort of. You can be across his skill set. You can know what he's about. So hopefully you get to see that soon, and I'll be proven right. But let's move on to the featherweight division. Now, next up is the winner of the main event last weekend. He fought Edson Barboza. I'm talking about Lerone Murphy, of course, and he got a very dominant 50-45 decision win, and he looked better than ever. I do think Lerone Murphy is the dark horse of featherweight, to be honest, because look, do I think Diego Lopez is better than him? Yes, but this is not about who's the best non-top 5 fighter. That's not what it's about. It's about who is the guy right now in the division that not many people are talking about, that I do think has a really good shot of at least being a top 5, top 10 problem, and a guy that can beat a lot of guys. And I do think it's Lerone Murphy, because I think we're all across Diego Lopez. People have been putting him in their Dark Horse videos since he fucking fought Evloev. And I got it. Once he fought Evloev, yeah, you put him in the video, you know, he's a Dark Horse. He goes out there and chins Sabatini in a minute, subs Gavin Tucker, you go, oh, yeah, guy's a Dark Horse. KOs Sabatini, I mean, you can still say, yeah, he's a Dark Horse, even though we're all talking about him. He fought on pay-per-view in MSG, but then he goes fights at 300 and chins Sadiq Youssef. Like, he's not a Dark Horse anymore. Everyone knows he's legit. People are talking about, like, him versus Ortega, or him versus, like, Evloev in a rematch, or him versus Yair, or Arnold Allen, or Emmett, or these guys. Like, that's not who a Dark Horse is. A Dark Horse is not guys who are being, like, stated to be able to beat top 5 guys or former title challengers. Like, that's not what a Dark Horse is. Dark Horses, in my opinion at least, are people that aren't being talked about in that way. People that are being like, oh, you know, he's fighting like a Kelvin Cater next, or a Dan Ige, you know, that'll be a tough fight. That's who people are talking about with Lerone Murphy. No one's saying, you know, this guy, I reckon he smokes Ortega right now if he fights him, or I reckon he beats Yair. Maybe he could, but no one's talking about that. So yeah, I think the expectations for Lerone Murphy are a bit lower. The hype around him is a bit lower. Even though he just smoked Edson Barboza, not many people are talking about him. So I want to bring some more hype to his name, I guess, if anyone gives a fuck. And I'm pretty high on Lerone Murphy. I picked Barboza against him, but after that one, his boxing looks really crisp. His grappling's good. He just looks like a really fundamentally, like, technically sound guy. He's open a little bit, but, like, he got beat up by Barboza at times. But come on, look at him in that fight. He looked on, and he looked really crisp everywhere. He didn't really look like an incomplete martial artist, which some guys at featherweight do. So yeah, let's move on though to the lightweight division. Now for lightweight, my official call is Mike Tebek Oral by now. Look, some people might come at me and say, you know, you've been saying that you're not picking guys who other people say are dark horses, and, you know, or people are talking about Oral by. Like, I know Lucas has already jumped on the train, but I jumped on the train after the Medic fight, like pretty much straight away. I picked him going into the Medic fight as well. I watched some of his fights on the regional scene, and I picked him against Medic. A lot of people didn't. But I picked him against Medic. I was very impressed with his debut. And then I picked him against Elvis Brenner, obviously. I want him to stay a little bit active. You know, he's a young guy. He's 26. But I don't think it's to the point where, like, everyone is being like, Oral By is a future top 5 champion. Like, I'm not saying he's a champion, future top 5 guy, but I definitely think he's got the capabilities to be. And the fact that he's 26, look, he does look a little bit kind of, you can tell he's inexperienced at times. You know, he doesn't have a deep MMA record. Like, he hasn't had heaps and heaps of fights. And you could tell against Brenner, he looked dominant in the first round, even in the second round. Obviously, his cardio, something to work on. pushing a heavy pace in the grappling is going to gas out a lot of people. Like, Hamzat gasses out after one round. Let's not act like he doesn't. So I think Matabek Orolbai, when he's on, when his cardio is at its best capacity, and when he's able to fight how he needs to, I think he's a problem for everyone. I think his grappling is really good. Brenner is a legit grappler. Brenner is a guy who, even though he was down 2-0 against Guram going into that third round where he got the finish, he was winning the first round against Guram, or Guram, whatever, and then he got dropped right at the end. Go back and rewatch that. He was literally winning like, if you cut that off before that 10-second mark of the first round, he wins that round 10-9. He was stuffing Guram's takedowns. He took Guram down. He was pressuring him on the feet, and he was looking really good. But compared to Orolbai hurt Brenner on the feet. He took him down. He made him look mid on the feet against Guram. Brenner looked good, and Guram's a pretty technical guy. So I think Orolbai is still being a bit underrated just because the way the third round went, it looked a bit sloppy and he was in some bad spots. But I do think that will go away with some more experience. I do think he'll learn how to get out of those spots easier. He won't look as vulnerable at times, and he will be able to kind of push his game plan and impose his will for longer across the duration of the fight. Because let's not act like he didn't just chuck around Uros Medic and just fucking take his head home with him in his UFC debut, like, after fighting a couple weeks before. Like, he's a really good fighter. And I do think he's still a little bit underrated just because people say, like, oh, he didn't look that good against Brenner. But trust me, this guy's going to be a future top 15, top 10 guy at least. But I got one other person to mention at lightweight. Let's just talk about that quickly. Now, I know some of you just had an aneurysm when you saw this person's face. Bernard St. Denis is still underrated as a lightweight fighter, and I still do think he is somewhat of a dark horse and a still potential top 5 guy in the lightweight division. Let's not act like he was not bitching Dustin Poirier in round 1, and literally Dustin had fucking 0 moments. I'm just going to say that. Now, don't come in the comments and say you're coping because BSD lost. I'm a big fan of BSD, but let's not act like he wasn't literally chucking around Poirier, landing good shots on the feet, and even in the second he was doing well. All that happened was, and this is not cope, this is just factually correct, he had staff. You could tell he's the most gassed he's ever looked after a first round. He pushed that pace 3 hard, or like he pushed a strong pace against Dos Santos when he was getting the fuck beat out of him in his debut. So why did he not gas then? Why did he not gas against Moises when he was just chucking him around? Why did he not gas against like Bonfim? Like, he doesn't gas in fights until that Poirier fight where he just looked so much slower than he always does on the feet. Look, I'm not saying his striking defense was ever really good. I do think he's still very open on the feet, even without the staff. But let's not act like that did not play a heavy factor in him gassing out and not being able to continue to push that grappling pace and just wading in on the feet with his hands down. So yeah, his striking is not that good. But let's not act like this guy is not a problem with the grappling. Like, who would beat this guy at lightweight right now? There's definitely guys. Islam would beat him. Charles would beat him. I think Arman would probably beat him right now. Gaethje, I would say, would beat him right now. I'm honestly not that... I'm pretty confident. Not pretty confident. I'm 50-50 on a rematch with him and Poirier. I think he beats Gamrot. I think he beats Beneil. I think he beats Michael Chandler because Chandler's retarded and he's not as precise of a striker as Poirier. I think Fiziev is a really tough fight for him stylistically. I think he beats Jalen Turner. I think he beats Dan Hooker. I think he beats Moicano. He loses to Holloway, of course. But I think this guy beats more guys than he loses to at lightweight, so I had to put him in this video too. But let's move on to the welterweight division. Now, I said some of them would be the same, and this is one of them. Jack Della Maddalena. Look, I was trying to find someone else, because everyone kind of does put Jack Della Maddalena as their dark horse of welterweight when I see these videos. I know Bedtime's done one a couple months ago. I did a similar concept a couple months ago, but I did it more prospect-wise. Rigo's done one. I know a lot of YouTubers have done these dark horse videos. And Jack is the guy, in my opinion, still at welterweight. Even though, look, YouTubers doing it... When I said before, if all the YouTubers are saying he's the dark horse, it means he's not the dark horse. But in some cases, that's not true, because I still do think the fans heavily underrate Jack Della Maddalena. Now, look, there's other guys. I was considering doing Buckley just to piss people off and it would be funny. But, like, who else is there? Like, I don't think Ian Gary's really a dark horse. I mean, you could put Ian Gary. And then, honestly, unranked fighters, I'm not going to do some, like, 1 or 2 fight prospect. That's too early in their career to be like, yeah, they're a dark horse. I mean, to be fair, Oral buys 2 fights in his career. But, whatever. Ignore that. And Van is 3 fights. But shut up. But whatever. I'm not gonna put like I was going like Kevin just said, like, nah, I can't be fucked. So yeah, I do think that Jack Della is still the guy. People still ain't talking about him. Like, you can't be like, oh, MVP's the dark horse. Like, no, he's not the dark horse. And apart from, like, obviously it's not Shavkat, it's not Bilal. Like, all the other guys have kind of been around for ages. I wouldn't call Jeff Neal a dark horse. Like, what do we call a Neil Magny's the dark horse now? But yeah, I do think it's Della. I do think he's got the best boxing in the UFC welterweight division, as I said in my my boxing video, best boxers in each division. And yeah, I still do think he's got a really underrated shot to beat Leon Edwards, honestly. I think Shavkat is a really tough fight for him. It's 50-50, maybe not 50-50, like 60-40 for Shavkat, but I think he's got a good shot at beating Leon. I think he beats Bilal, honestly, and I think in a 3-rounder. 5 rounds, it's tough when you need to see his cardio, but I still think Della beats a lot of guys, and I think people are kind of taken away because they're like, oh, he was kind of losing to Burns. Burns is a really tough matchup for him. Stylistically, Burns is a difficult matchup for Jack Della. But like, he gave Holland nothing. And he looked really good in pretty much all of his fights, apart from Basil Hafez, and even that he was beating him up, and that was on short notice when he had to cut weight twice in a week. So yeah, I do think that Jack is still pretty underrated by the masses, and I still think he's the dark horse of welterweight. But let's move on to the middleweight division. Now, the middleweight division, I'm going with Nasruddin Imavov. Now, I'm sorry, Lucas Tracy, I know I didn't put Anthony Hernandez or Roman Kopylov, and he's just had an aneurysm seeing that. But I don't think, again, I do think both of those two are very good. I think Anthony Hernandez is an underrated fighter by a lot of the fan base. But when you're seeing literally every every hardcore fan is like, no one talks about Anthony Hernandez. It's like, bro, everyone's talking about him. Everyone's talking about how no one talks about him. That means they're talking about him. So I think Hernandez is no longer that real dark horse guy. I think before the Kopylov fight, he definitely belonged in a video like this. But I can't put Kopylov in here. If he gets a win against Almeida next weekend, I'll chuck him in the list. But I do think it is actually, and I can't put like Michel Pereira, people are really high on him. I think Imavov is just that guy that's kind of slipped under the radar. He's fighting Cannonier in like 2 weeks. And I'm seeing a lot of comments. I saw the betting lines came out. It opened as even money, minus 110 each. And then it moved out slightly to Imavov as a favourite around minus 140. And now that might make you think, oh, he's not a dark horse, he's the betting favourite against Cannonier. But in my opinion, I saw a lot of the comments and they're like, what do you mean Cannonier's going to murder him? Cannonier murder. And I just think he's being underrated severely in this matchup. I think he's being underrated overall. I think people don't realise how close he went with Strickland. Strickland won clearly, but it was one of those fights where it's a clear win for a guy, but it's still a close fight. So yeah, I do think he's very underrated. I think his striking is some of the best in the division. I think his kicks are really good. His boxing's really good. His speed, great. He's got great grappling. The Buckley wins aged well. He was smoking Chris Curtis before the eye poke. I know Delidzi's not that good, but Delidzi had a really close fight with Vittori, and he just schooled Delidzi and should have finished him because Herb Dean robbed him of a finish because that kick, when he threw the kick that got a point deducted, that wasn't illegal by the rules of in Nevada. That actually is not an illegal kick because only his fingers were down and not an entire palm. But I do think he's underrated. I do think he's going to beat Cannonier by decision. Look, he's not a finisher, but I still think his skills and his technical ability is really underrated, and people don't know how good he is. So I think everyone that's saying Cannonier shouldn't be fighting this guy's got no business in there with Cannonier, they're underrating Imavov. But let's move on. Now, the light heavyweight division, I've gone with Alexander Rakic, and I know a lot of you might say something that is a dumb pick. A lot of you are going to be like, what the fuck? He just lost to Yuri. He just got KO'd. How could you say he's a dark horse? And the reason is because he was literally tuning up Yuri and fucking him up in the first round. He just didn't account and didn't pace himself for the fact that Yuri can't be fucking beaten unless you're Alex Pereira and just boop him and just knock him out. But Alexander Rakic's technique looked great, his leg kicks looked great, and he was causing a lot of problems for Yuri. And I do think if this guy gets into more of an active competition cycle and we don't wait until next year to see him, like if we see this guy fight in like September, chuck this guy on the Paris card for fuck's sake, do him on the Paris card in like a rematch against Ozdemir. If Ozdemir beats Walker, do like a Rakic-Ozdemir rematch. I think Rakic would fucking murk him in a rematch, but do something like that. There's a lot of European light heavyweights. Like, bro, we've got fucking Ankalaev's Russian, Blachowicz is Polish, Yuri's from the Czech Republic, Rakic is Austrian, Serbian, Ozdemir is Swiss, like, Bogdan, I know he's like, Uzbekistan's not in Europe, but he kind of trains there, I think, or he's probably familiar with the people there. Like, Krylov's Ukrainian, Russian. There's so many European guys in the light heavyweight division. So I'm saying it's kind of irrelevant to this topic, but I'm saying what I want to see is not be inactive. Like, come on, Rakic, you're really good. I think you can beat like almost everyone in this division. I think Pereira and Yuri are the only two I would confidently pick to beat him. I wouldn't even pick Ankalaev to confidently beat him. I'd probably pick him, but apart from that, tell me who else apart from Pereira, who I even think Rakic would grapple Pereira. So I actually think that's not even a really confident pick. Tell me who you confidently would pick Alexander Rakic against. Sorry, who you would pick against Rakic. Because I don't think there's that many people. I think he beats Blachowicz in a rematch. I think he beats Jamal Hill. I think he's a nightmare matchup for Jamal Hill. I think this guy, with his boxing, with his leg kicks, and his wrestling, I think he's a problem for a lot of guys. And people aren't talking about him as such. I think people just see the result on paper against Yuri and see TKO, and they don't realize that until then, Yuri had like one moment. But apart from that, he was getting beat the hell out of. But Yuri's just like durable as fuck. So it's tough for Rakic. He wasn't expecting to be able to punch someone like 50 times in the face and for them to not die. It's like kind of weird for that to not happen. But skill-wise, technique-wise, I still think Rakic beats almost everyone. I know some people call Krylov the dark horse. Sorry, bro. I'm only going with people that have actually competed in the last year and who might not be suspected to have died at war. So I can't be calling you the dark horse of the division if I think you're dead. But if we see Krylov, appear again, if he pops his head out, I might chuck him as like a part 2 of this list. But yeah, Rakic is the guy. I think real hardcore fans, real people that know what they saw in that Yuri fight and have seen Rakic fight before, know that he's a problem for a lot of guys. And he's also not that old either. He's like 32. Let's move on, though, to the heavyweight division. Lastly, this is kind of a boring pick. I'm going to go with Alexander Volkov. Now, I was trying to think if I could do something a little bit cool, if I could be a little bit sneaky with it and, like, piss everyone off and pick, like, Jailton Almeida. But I just couldn't bring myself to pick someone that just got TKO'd with hammer fists while on a single leg takedown. I just can't be putting that man as the dark horse of the division. Like, I got no issue putting Rakic there even though he lost, but I can't be putting you Jailton Almeida. And yeah, like, I wouldn't call like Pavlovich is not a dark horse. At this stage, I wouldn't really say Blades is a dark horse. And even if he was considered one, I don't think he's beaten Aspinall, so why would I put him on the list? Look, it's weird because half the division is just fat nobodies. Like, I was thinking of doing like Tabora or something as just a joke, as like a meme. But yeah, there's really not that many people at heavyweight. I guess I'll go Volkov. I think he's going to lose to Pavlovich, but I'll put him in here anyway, just for the sake of, like, there's every division in the title, so I got to put someone in for heavyweight. Volkov's pretty solid. His striking's getting much improved. His grappling's much improved. He's not really getting chinned recently either. But I think he will lose to Pavlovich. But if not, if he beats Pavlovich, then this pick will age pretty well, and then he'll definitely be a dark horse, and he'll be looking at maybe a win. He maybe could get a rematch with Garn in Paris, and then if he wins that, could fight for a belt. But yeah. That's the video done, guys. I hope you enjoyed. We got about 25 minutes of me yapping. That's what you should expect when you click on this video, when you click on a video for this channel. It's always just me yapping. And you might say, why do you talk for this long? You've only talked about 9 people and you've stretched it out to 25 minutes. And I say, because that's what I do. That's my specialty. I specialize in the art of the yapping. But hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.